It's decision time. Get that ballot and cast your vote. Next week, America elects either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump to become the 47th President of the United States. The election, from a Catholic perspective, ahead.
The decision you made could have a consequential impact on the presidency.
We talked to a state senator in Nebraska whose Catholic principles led him to an important decision that just might determine whether Harris or Trump becomes our next commander-in-chief.
We've done whatever we need to do to thrive and to stay open, and we want the Archdiocese to recognize that.
And a parish community in Baltimore tries to convince Catholic leadership to allow it to stay open in the face of declining membership. We explore the issue of Catholic Church consolidation. EWTN News In Depth starts now.
Next Tuesday, you have to stand up and you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've done a terrible job, that crooked Joe Biden has done a terrible job. You've destroyed our country. We're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get out, get out. You're fired.
It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America.
It's a full-fledged fight to the finish line as our country goes to the polls to elect one of these two people as the next president of the United States. Election Day is finally here. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Montse Alvarado, sitting in this week for Catherine Hadro. We've heard their pitches, we've seen their supporters' enthusiasm. We've had a chance to learn each candidate's pros and cons. Now it's time to go vote for one of two very different visions of America. We will take a look at this very consequential election from a Catholic perspective. But first, the closing messages of the Kamala Harris and Donald Trump campaigns.
On day one, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. You know, he talks about the enemies from within. When I am elected, I will walk in with a to-do list focused on your needs.
And I will bring back a thing called the American dream. Isn't that nice? Because we haven't had that. We haven't had that in a long time. Our country will be bigger, better, bolder, richer, safer, and stronger than ever before.
The flurry of campaigning across the 7 battleground states continues up until Election Day on Tuesday. Both Trump and Harris crisscrossing each other in the northern blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, with stops in the Sunbelt battlegrounds of North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. But their big signature closing messages were delivered earlier in the week. Trump at the iconic Madison Square Garden in Manhattan, and Harris at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C., with the White House as the backdrop.
I pledge to you to approach my work with the joy and optimism that comes from making a difference in people's lives. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. And to always put country above party and self.
After years of building up foreign nations, defending foreign borders, and protecting foreign lands, we are finally going to build up our country, defend our borders, and protect our citizens. It's called America First, and it's going to happen at levels never seen before.
Political yard signs for both candidates are blanketing homes and lawns across the country, with pollsters showing the race is basically a dead heat. Way too close to tell who will prevail after the polls close on November 5th. In this close election, there will be many legal challenges fought in court over various voting procedures. More than 160 cases have already been filed. And before the voting begins, this major case has a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. On Wednesday, in a ruling from its emergency docket, a divided Supreme Court allowed the Commonwealth of Virginia to continue a program aimed at preventing non-U.S. citizens from voting. The case concerns almost 1,600 registrations that Virginia DMV records indicate could have come from self-identified non-citizens. Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin called the decision a victory for common sense, but voting rights groups call the move a red herring, often catching citizens eligible to vote in the middle because they have since become naturalized citizens or because they simply checked a wrong box. Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson dissented from the majority, but as is typical with emergency cases, the court did not provide an explanation for its decision. The search continues for the suspect who set ballot boxes on fire in the Pacific Northwest, and police worry he'll strike again. 3 fires have been set with incendiary devices on the boxes in Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, Washington. While Portland's ballots were protected by a fire suppression system, Vancouver lost almost 500 ballots in the blaze. Both cities say they're enhancing security around ballot boxes. Election officials are contacting affected voters about getting replacement ballots. This, just one example of election interference officials worry could disrupt this year's vote. To discuss the end of the campaigns, election projections, and give insight from a Catholic perspective, we're joined by Kenneth Craycraft. He's an attorney and a professor of moral theology at Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Cincinnati. He wrote the book Citizens Yet Strangers, Living Authentically Catholic in a Divided America. And Nicholas Tamino, the assistant editorial features editor at the Wall Street Journal, which has featured commentary on Catholic events like the National Eucharistic Congress. Ken, it's great to have you back. And Nick, welcome to our program. The role of Catholicism in this election has been significant. Ken, while it has been editorialized that the Catholic vote is not really a monolith, do you see Catholics playing a larger role in these elections?
I think I do. I think I do because I think this is one of these elections where Catholics are really being drawn into thinking more deeply about their faith and their response to the candidates than they have been in the past. And the reason for that is that it simply isn't as clear who a Catholic should vote for. I think most Catholics think it's pretty clear who they shouldn't vote for in this election. But the choice between the candidates this time is not the tough choice, as it often is. The choice in this election is the tough choice of, can I vote for either? And therefore, I think that Catholics have a very strong and are going to have a very strong influence on the outcome of this vote, because they have to make a very difficult decision, or we have to make a very difficult decision that's different from the ones that we've had to make before. I think that the problem of life and the problem of the candidates' positions on life are going to be performative in this election, and the way that we Catholics look at these two candidates and their stances on life and other things as well is going to have a very big impact on this election. And I think that there's a sense in which Catholics might even have something of an outsized effect on this election, even more so than perhaps in 2020 or 2016. It does call us, again, though, however, to be very careful about the way that we think about our faith and the way that we think about the way that we cast our vote. And if anything, I think Catholics are far more attuned to thinking more deeply about our faith and about the way that our faith has to inform our vote and inform the way that we approach politics in general. So I think this is in something of a watershed Catholic for moments, this election, and I think that we're going to see that play out next Tuesday.
Absolutely, and certainly calling for every Catholic to get out to vote. Well, Nick, Catholic issues on life, especially IVF, and the commentary from former President Trump's posting of the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. These images have featured on your pages. How do you feel about the influence of Catholicism this election season?
I generally think that its influence has been marginal, actually. In one way, the former president has thrown something of a bone to Catholics in, as you say, tweeting on the feast of St. Michael the Archangel, the prayer to St. Michael the Archangel, or on the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, he tweeted a photo. Likewise, he also commemorated the 40th anniversary of the martyrdom of a Catholic Polish priest. But more substantively, I think that issues that animate the Catholic vote, as it were, have been pushed something to the margins. The RNC's platform, for instance, this summer was stripped of its advocacy, or at least traditional full-throated advocacy of life. It stripped its advocacy of the Human Life Amendment. No longer does it support a 20-week national restriction. It also softened its language on marriage. No longer does it define marriage as being between a man and a woman. And as you alluded to, Monse, the party now also supports IVF and access to birth control. So substantively, I do think there is much to be desired from the right. Likewise, I think there is even more so from the Democratic Party. Certainly, in as much as Catholic ideas and values have been advanced in the campaign, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have used it, I think, usefully and correctly as a cudgel, reminding voters of the record of Vice President Harris as a senator of California and as Attorney General. And of course, there have been some aesthetic pitches for Catholics, but generally, the values and ideas that the Church teaches and recognizes to be true, I don't really think naturally, as Ken says, have much of a home in either parties.
Absolutely. Well, Ken, let's talk about the life issue since you brought it up. Has the confirmation of the Democratic Party as the party of abortion and the move away from protections for life by Republicans alienated religious voters?
I think it has alienated a lot of religious voters. And to add to what Nick has said, one way that the Catholic vote might be significant this election is if Catholics stay home, because there are a relatively large number of us in terms of a particular religious voting bloc. And the way that the Republican Party has moved away from abortion in its platform, and the way that President Trump has basically said, I'm not going to be all that concerned about protecting unborn life because I've already done my job in my first term, and now it's up to the states. I do think that's alienating. I think Nick is correct. And we Catholics, once again, this puts us in a position where we're going to have to look hard and deep at the way that we understand our own place in American politics if neither of the major parties is consistently supportive of life the way that the Church teaches us that we have to be. Forming our conscience is a difficult enough task as it is living in non-Catholic America. It's even more difficult now, at least in terms of forming it in such a way that we cast a moral vote that we're comfortable with, having formed our conscience according to the Church's teaching.
That's right. Well, Nick, you've also written on the creative license, if we say it charitably, that has been taken by the Harris-Walz campaign on pro-life laws at the state level, especially with the story of Amber Thurman. Are voters put off by this, or are they aware of the misinformation?
Well, I think Catholic voters and generally voters who have read beyond the headlines would be really resistant to this. As you say, the case of Amber Thurman is one in which a woman in Georgia tragically died after not getting life-saving care that the state of Georgia would have lawfully provided to her. It's been used in the media by the Harris and Walz campaign to suggest that this is a direct result of what they describe as Trump abortion bans. They describe women throughout the country as needing to be on death's door before they're given treatment. This is patently false. Some states, such as Georgia, Florida, and Texas, have very importantly clarified their statutes that life-saving care in those instances is always acceptable. In fact, it's the doctor's medical duty. And they've also usefully clarified that such cases as miscarriage or ectopic pregnancies are not implicated by abortion statutes. However, I do think that it is unfortunately effective at times if Kamala Harris is on stage, as she has been, with physicians in white coats suggesting that these statutes bind their hands. Notwithstanding the falsehood, I do think it leaves voters with the unfortunate impression that it's true. And I think we have seen some of the bad fruits of this misinformation since 2022 in the form of really permissive state ballot referenda passing that allow for really non-restrictive, extreme, maximally acceptive abortion regimes. And they've passed really because their advocates have suggested that the alternative is the case of Amber Thurman. Never mind that it's not true. I do think that it unfortunately resonates with some people.
It's unfortunate because it puts a lot of people in danger to have that kind of misinformation. Well, Ken, you get the last question. How has the right to free speech fared this election season with these accusations of misinformation being flung right and left?
You know, the right to free speech is only as good as a free and unbiased press, and it has suffered badly this election cycle. I've been very slow to join the bandwagon that the mainstream media, or sometimes it's called the legacy media, is heavily biased. I'm on board with that now. It is heavily biased, and it really is sometimes breathtakingly biased. The way that the mainstream media will slant news in favor of one candidate and against another. I'm not here to endorse a candidate, but it's appalling the way that the so-called legacy media or mainstream media has inserted itself in a political way into this campaign rather than reporting news, making news, and in some ways, in very significant ways, working as the mouthpiece for the Democratic Party and the Harris campaign rather than straight news reporting. So free speech has suffered badly, Monsi, because there isn't a free press in the United States the way that we need a free press in order for free speech to really have any meaning. And without that, the misinformation, the disinformation is rampant this election cycle, and it seems to be getting worse the closer we get to November 5th. Well, we're grateful for you, and Nick, we're grateful for the work that you do at the Wall Street Journal, and we do our best to continue to to stick to our mission at EWTN of defending truth. Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you. In a presidential election this close, it appears the winning edge will come down to small pockets of voters in key areas. That may be true not only in the total number of ballots cast by voters, but also in the race to accumulate enough votes in the Electoral College. As it turns out, one politician in Nebraska, a state senator known for his strong adherence to his Catholic principles and values, could have an outsized role in who becomes our next president. Mark Irons has our report.
In the final hours of the 2024 campaign, the candidates tried to convince those undecided voters across the country. There is one politician whose decision could make all the difference.
I've kept my word. I've never broke my word.
Would you believe the outcome of the presidential election could come down to this one man from Nebraska?
I mean, how does it make you feel? Do you feel any pressure?
Meet Republican State Senator Mike McDonald, who just weeks ago resisted pressure from within his own party to change the way Nebraska counts electoral votes.
I believe I made the right decision.
How could McDonald have such a major impact on the presidency? It all starts with a little math. To become president, you need 270 electoral votes. 48 of the states are winner-take-all. For example, if you win the popular vote in California, Missouri, or swing state Pennsylvania, you take all of the electoral votes there. Only Maine and Nebraska do things differently. In those states, the winner of the state popular vote gets 2 electoral votes, but the rest of the electoral votes are split by congressional district. Republicans reliably win 2 more, painting most of the state red, but the other district surrounding Omaha is being referred to as the blue dot by Democratic voters there in the state's 2nd congressional district. They have even put up signs to remind people just how important this one electoral vote could be in a potentially tight presidential race to 270.
One vote could make a huge difference.
Depending on election result outcomes in the various swing states, that one electoral vote in the 2nd congressional district, which went red for Trump in 2016 and blue for Biden in 2020, could be critical to either candidate for presidential victory in 2024.
Do you think Nebraska's 2nd congressional district could decide the presidency?
Possibly.
And here's where Senator McDonald comes in. He could have voted with fellow Republican senators in the state legislature to change Nebraska to a winner-take-all state, which would have benefited former President Donald Trump, who is likely to win Nebraska's popular vote and could have secured all 5 electoral votes if it was winner-take-all. But McDonnell was a key holdout and wouldn't support it. He believes state politicians shouldn't change election rules weeks before the vote.
It's just not fair, and I don't think that's the way we should treat democracy. And I believe every voter, regardless if you agree with who they're going to vote for or not, they should have that opportunity, and we shouldn't disenfranchise them 30 days before a presidential election.
McDonnell says if the people of Nebraska want to vote to change the system, they should have the power to during a midterm year. At the same time, he personally believes the way Nebraska splits electoral votes by congressional district is a better reflection of democracy. He thinks all states should take it up.
And when I ran in 2016, I said I was not going to vote to go back to winner take all. I opposed winner take all, and I still do. So I've been consistent.
Still, Republicans at the state and national level pushed hard for change leading up to Election Day. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, a friend of Trump, traveled to Nebraska in September to make the case.
I hope the people in Nebraska will understand this may come down to a single electoral vote.
And Trump even spoke over the phone with Nebraska State Senator Merv Reapy. So we had to ask McDonnell.
Did President Trump call you and ask you to support winner take all in Nebraska?
My policy for the last 8 years has been I don't talk about private conversations with constituents or with colleagues, and I'm going to continue to keep that policy.
Would you deny that he called you?
I'm not going to talk about any private conversations.
Trump did share his opinion of McDonnell in a Truth Social post, writing, "State Senator named Mike McDonnell decided, for no reason whatsoever, to get in the way of a great Republican common sense victory. Just another grandstander." But McDonnell says he's just keeping his word to constituents, which is important to him as a Catholic.
Do your convictions about this, do they come from your faith at all?
Oh, definitely. And I can say for my 8 years of service, I've kept my word. I've never broke my word to a constituent or a colleague. And that's based on my faith.
It wasn't surprising to hear McDonnell say that. After all, before our interview about the presidential election, we had traveled to Nebraska to learn more about his reasoning behind another political decision.
So for you, your faith really informs your politics, it sounds like.
Being a Christian and a member of the Roman Catholic Church is more important to me than a political party.
He may have felt some opposition from fellow Republicans to change the way votes are counted in Nebraska, but before that, he was feeling opposition from fellow Democrats for being pro-life.
I wasn't asking them to agree with me. I was just asking them to respect that position that I held my whole life.
As a Democrat, McDonnell voted for bills to protect unborn children in Nebraska, but he was formally reprimanded with a censure from state Democrats for his pro-life record. He responded, "I am a Christian. I am a lifelong member of the Roman Catholic Church. I am pro-life. The censure of me from the Nebraska Democratic Party will not change my pro-life vote." McDonnell says he lost the needed resources and support of the Democratic Party, so he changed party affiliation earlier this year.
Today I'm announcing I am now going to be a registered Republican in the state of Nebraska.
You stood by your pro-life convictions and were opposed by those in the Democratic Party that you were a part of. Then you became a Republican and were opposed by those in your party for not agreeing to change the way electoral votes are counted in Nebraska. In both of those cases, did you ever feel like you should just go with the majority?
Well, no, I did not feel that because I don't think that is the job I was elected to do.
McDonnell says his faith informs all his political decisions. And he looks to the example of St. Thomas More, the patron saint of politicians. As England's Lord Chancellor, More loyally served King Henry VIII, but he would not support the king's rejection of the Catholic faith and its teachings. As a result, More was put to death.
And he said, the day they executed him, he said, "I remain a loyal servant to the king, but to God first." And I believe we all should take our religious beliefs above, political parties. I'm a Christian and a lifelong member of the Roman Catholic Church, and I'm proud of that.
Mark Irons, EWTN News In Depth.
In what polls indicate is a nearly tied presidential election, every vote will count. If you haven't already taken advantage of early voting hours or vote by mail, this Tuesday is your chance to cast your ballot on official Election Day. For information about voting from a Catholic perspective, you can turn to the EWTN 2024 Voter Guide. It covers issues ranging from abortion and life to immigration, foreign policy, and the economy. It's available on the website of our sister publication, the National Catholic Register, at ncregister.com. And stay with EWTN News for team coverage on Election Day. Our reporters will be in key battleground states and at presidential candidate watch parties. Plus, our guest panelists will provide expert analysis of election results from a Catholic perspective. Join me and the EWTN team for 1-hour live election specials on Tuesday at 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, with a live day-after look at the results on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Remember, your vote counts. There's much more ahead on this edition of EWTN News in Depth. Insights from the conclusion of the Synod on Synodality from our senior Vatican analysts in Rome next. Parishioners struggle with an archdiocesan decision to close their church. A heartfelt conversation ahead. And a look at newly canonized saints and their contributions in making our world a holier place. EWTN News in Depth will be right back.
The Pope's message to the entire human family stems from a single spring, presented here in a more explicit, clear way. Christ the Lord, his love for humanity.
A key Vatican theologian reflects on the latest writings from Pope Francis, who says the Sacred Heart of Jesus provides healing and peace in a hectic modern world. It's been a busy few weeks at the Vatican as the years-long Synod on Synodality reached its conclusion. But amid the hustle and bustle of the global assembly, Pope Francis reminded us to return to the heart of the matter with his latest encyclical. Dilexit Nos, Latin for He Loved Us, is the Holy Father's fourth encyclical. In it, he reflects on how Christ's heart provides healing for a divided and broken world. Pope Francis draws extensively from Scripture, centuries of church tradition, and the saints. He says the Sacred Heart offers a vital response to what he calls a liquid society dominated by consumerism and tech, including artificial intelligence. The Vatican held a press conference for the encyclical's release last Thursday, where the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith's Archbishop Bruno Forte explained how this text provides a key to understanding the Holy Father's entire pontificate.
It can really be considered a compendium of everything that Pope Francis, the Pope that God gave the Church in these not easy years, wanted and wants to say to every brother and sister in humanity.
The document was released during the final days of the last session of the Synod on Synodality, a 3-year journey of listening and discernment within the Universal Church. Throughout October, the 355 Synod delegates, comprising of cardinals, bishops, religious, and lay people, worked together to produce a final document that outlines recommendations for church renewal. In a surprising move, Pope Francis ratified this final document rather than publishing a separate apostolic exhortation.
It's enough what we've approved here. And there are already highly concrete indications in the document that can be a guide for the mission of the churches in their specific continents and contexts. And that is why I'm making it immediately available to everyone.
The 52-page document outlines proposals for expanded leadership roles for women, greater lay participation in decision-making, and significant structural reforms. The text says the question of women's access to diaconal ministry remains open. Though the Assembly is over, 10 study groups will continue to examine key topics, like the position of women deacons, through June of next year. The Synod closed with a special Mass in St. Peter's Basilica on Sunday. There, the Vatican unveiled the newly restored baldacchino, a centuries-old bronze canopy intricately designed by famed sculptor Gianlorenzo Bernini. Pope Francis also led the faithful in veneration of a relic of St. Peter's chair, a wooden throne believed to have belonged to the apostle and first pope. It was the first time the chair has been shown in public since 1867. To discuss the Pope's encyclical and the Synod, we are joined now from Rome by Francis Rocca, Senior Vatican Analyst for EWTN News. Frank, thank you for being here. How significant are encyclicals? St. John Paul II wrote 14 of them, Pope Emeritus Benedict wrote 3, and Pope Francis has also written now 4.
Well, they're considered the most authoritative form of papal writing. They don't always have the most impact or make the most news. Laudato Si is Francis's most famous, certainly, in which he talked about the protection of creation, of the environment. But they are meant to be read by everyone and often addressed to the whole world, not just the Catholic Church.
Right. If we think about the dominion of a bishop, he's in charge of all of the souls in his diocese, not just those that are baptized Catholic. Well, Archbishop Bruno Forte says this encyclical is the key to understanding Pope Francis's pontificate. What are the biggest takeaways from Dilexit Nos?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about it is that it's certainly focused on the devotion to the Sacred Heart, which is a devotion we associate particularly with St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. 350 years ago in France, experienced these apparitions of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But it's also has relevance to contemporary society and speaks to people in general, I think even non-Catholics, talking about the need to connect our hearts to the challenges of modern society. And he talks about, I think, as you mentioned, consumerism and technology as being threats to that. He talks particularly about technology fragmenting our relationships. And he says, about artificial intelligence, he says, no algorithm can capture the nostalgia. And he gives a very literary example about remembering his mother and grandmother making these empanadillas, these pies, and using he was helping making with the fork. And so he gets very intimate and wants to talk about the technology can't capture this. So it's about returning to the heart so that we can restore balance in our lives and our relationships, and also service to others, which of course is a key theme for Pope Francis always.
Yeah, it certainly felt like a call to all Christians to return to just having a real relationship, a physical relationship with Jesus Christ. Well, I do want to move on to the Synod on Synodality. How significant then is it that Pope Francis chose to ratify this final document right away rather than release his own synthesis and reflections?
Well, he, of course, amended canon law to enable him to do that, and so he set the stage for that. Yes, usually he would take this as input and then write his own document. In this case, he said, no, this is we have enough. So I think it's a strong gesture toward including consulting the laity who are a part of this synod, unusually, uniquely in the history of the synod. Last year, he added lay people, including women. And I think it's a gesture toward that. We should note, of course, it's not, as our colleague Matthew Bunson has pointed out, it's not a normative document. It doesn't have rules. It doesn't have regulations. It's more of a pastoral document. It's more advisory. So let's say the stakes are lower. But he's saying, yeah, I hear you, and this is the direction we want to go in.
And it does have significant advice, as you say, for bishops to apply at the local level. Well, these synod sessions have been the first to, as you mentioned, invite delegates beyond the traditional assembly of bishops, including lay people. Bishop Robert Barron recently told EWTN News the following. Let's listen.
The wider consultation with the laity so they can be more involved in the decision-making process of the church. That's a basic concern of synodality, that we listen more fully, more widely, especially to voices often marginalized. That's a big part of it.
Did including lay people in this synod process have a significant impact? Were the discussions different because of them?
Well, I think that's right. I mean, the language of the document is perhaps less ecclesial, maybe, and at least in tone than we might have seen in previous documents of its kind, a little bit less technical. Or if it was technical, it used a language that's become more current in current discussions in which lay people and activists have been involved. I mean, I think it's important to remember that the Pope has the last word always. He doesn't have to take this advice. He doesn't have to act in any particular way. So it's not as if, at least in this case, he's ceding authority. The bishops are losing authority, magisterial authority. But it is a strong statement that the lay people have to be consulted, and certainly sets a precedent that you will think other future popes and other bishops will follow.
An important one. Well, this question of women deacons has been one of the closely watched issues from outside the Synod halls. It's making a lot of people nervous. The final document says the issue remains open. 27% of delegates voted against this paragraph. What did this pushback look like?
Well, I mean, there seems to be anxiety about the lack of clarity. I mean, the statement itself says that it talks about the question of women's access to the diaconate or to the diaconal ministry. That doesn't necessarily mean ordination. And we know that the Pope said in the spring, he told CBS television, no, holy orders, no. Women can be deaconesses, maybe, that there is a precedent for that in the history of the church, but they can't be ordained. But however, Cardinal Fernandez, the head of the doctrinal office, said at the beginning of this fall synod, he said, well, we don't have enough to decide that right now. So he seemed to allow this statement doesn't resolve that ambiguity. And I think there must be some anxiety on the part of some of the delegates that, like, oh my gosh, are we opening the door and saying, yeah, maybe they can be ordained after all, which is perplexing to some because since the Pope seems to have said, or did say, that that's not possible.
Right. A lot of contradictory statements there and something important to watch. Well, what comes next, Frank? You recently wrote in the National Catholic Register that the Synod will have an epilogue in these study groups that will be examining these controversial issues and reporting in over the summer. What comes next?
Well, that's right. They have to give their conclusions to the Pope, and so even though he says he's not going to write an apostolic exhortation, based on this synod, he can certainly act on any of those recommendations or choose to study them further, and that includes the question of women in ministry. It also potentially includes LGBT issues, contraception, other controversial issues that were expected to be addressed at the synod and did come up. So that's a big step. We'll have to see where the Pope goes with that.
Yeah, well, we'll be watching it very closely and relying on you for that, too. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you.
This church means everything to us. When I say church, I don't just mean building. I mean the people, because the people are the church.
Next, the difficult topic of Catholic Church closures and consolidations. A heartbreak for some, a new faith community for others. When EWTN News In Depth returns. It's a sad reality in many dioceses in America that church attendance is on the decline. So much so that to save money, many have made the difficult decision to close small churches and consolidate parishes into larger regional ones. That can be a sad outcome for people whose families have spent generations at the neighborhood parish. Yet many dioceses have successfully navigated these changes, forming new faith communities that are thriving. Roselle Regis looks at the issue of church consolidation in Baltimore and Pittsburgh in this Catholic Life report.
I've been a parishioner here at least about 60 years. I used to live down the street about 4 blocks away.
St. Anne's Catholic Church in Baltimore, Maryland recently celebrated its 150th birthday. Little did parishioners know at the time that St. Anne's would be among those churches on a list to close its doors.
You heard of unknown, untold, unsung heroes. Well, there's myriads of unsung heroes in Baltimore and beyond because they passed through this church, worshiping God, and were nurtured.
Longtime parishioners of St. Anne's are devastated.
A lot of anger, a lot of disappointment, a lot of hurt.
This is part of the Archdiocese of Baltimore's reorganization plan called Seek the City to Come. After nearly 2 years of listening, visioning, and discernment, the Archdiocese of Baltimore revealed the final plan in May.
Difficult decisions have to be made. We cannot keep doing things the way we have done them in the past. These challenging times require creative thinking, bold initiative, and the unwavering courage to reimagine parish life for today and generations to come.
The existing 61 parishes will be merged into 30 worship and ministry sites. For most parishes, the new configurations and mergers will be done by December 1st. That includes St. Anne's. St. Anne's and St. Wenceslaus are slated to merge with St. Francis Xavier, one of the oldest African American Catholic churches in the country. A sign hanging at the church's entrance can't be missed: Save St. Anne's from closing. A group of parishioners plans to appeal the decision. They are proposing what they call a win-win situation for the Archdiocese and for St. Anne's.
The win for us certainly would be to stay open, to continue to administer to the community all up and down from Greenmount Avenue all the way past York Road. That's important to us. The win for the Archdiocese is that they would continue to have this church that's been here for 151 years.
I think God wants us to be here to be a witness to what it really means to be a good Catholic. So there we are, and there we've been.
This anchor here is what parishioners of St. Anne's proudly display in front of their church. Just like their slogan, they tell me this community is anchored in faith. Parishioner Bobby Jackson says St. Anne's does significant work socially, spiritually, and charitably.
This church is a church that gives to the community. We feed, we nurture, we give away bikes and things at Christmas time. We had health fairs here. We shouldn't abandon Baltimore City. And overwhelmingly a lot of black small parishes.
Church closures aren't unique to Baltimore. Many dioceses across the nation are undergoing the same reorganization process for different reasons, including reduced mass attendance and participation, a declining number of priests, secularization, and the toll of the clergy sexual abuse scandal. Some of the dioceses and archdioceses that have announced restructuring plans in recent years include the Archdiocese of St. Louis, the Archdiocese of Seattle, the Archdiocese of New Orleans, the Archdiocese of Chicago, the Diocese of Buffalo, New York, and the Diocese of Pittsburgh.
Beginning in October of 2018 is when we announced what the groupings were. And at that particular point, we announced to our people that we were going to be going from 188 parishes down to where we are now, would be 60 parishes.
Bishop David Zubik of the Diocese of Pittsburgh tells us that the restructuring plan they called On Mission for the Church Alive took several years to execute, starting with a year of prayer, followed by a year of meeting with parish communities.
All of these things would be painful realities, but nonetheless, I think people were more and more committed to see that what makes the church is our relationship with Christ and not the buildings.
The Diocese of Pittsburgh celebrated one of the last church mergers in January. Nevertheless, Bishop Zubik says the work is not done.
Once the parishes came together and formed 60 faith communities, the next step was, now how do we take those communities and make sure that they are vibrant?
He tells us that overall, the overwhelming response from the faithful has been positive.
I'm excited about meeting the new people in the new parishes. I have no fears, other than the fact that I hope that I can get to liturgy safely and continue to celebrate because we are on mission.
Meanwhile, back in Baltimore, churches have yet to close and merge, but there is hope.
When I hear Seek the City, I see a new, more refreshed church with new faces, both young and old, all ages, all colors, all languages.
An opportunity to remake ourselves and to reimagine ourselves as a new church in the city.
But parishioners of St. Anne's are counting down the days until they have to say goodbye to their beloved church.
I will be extremely sad, but I have faith, and it's my faith that will get me through. I will always be Catholic, a practicing Catholic, always.
Rosal Regis, EWTN News In Depth.
We have to make sure to keep those in our prayers. News headlines are next in the Week in Review. Concern that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza could worsen tops the Week in Review. That after the Israeli Knesset this week passed legislation banning the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, or UNRWA, from conducting any services in territories under Israel's control. UNRWA was founded to provide essential services to nearly 6 million Palestinians across the Middle East and has been the backbone of civilian aid efforts, providing refugee camp infrastructure and emergency food delivery in Gaza throughout the Israel-Hamas war. But Israeli legislation barring it passed by an overwhelming majority, despite strong international pressure from Western nations. The vote also cut Israel's diplomatic ties with the agency. The issue? Suspicion that a group of UNRWA staffers participated in the Hamas attacks last year and that some still have militant ties.
For over a year now, evidence has emerged of collusion by UNRWA with Hamas. The fact that numerous members of Hamas, including fighters, were identified as working for UNRWA. Clearly, UNRWA has been giving cover to Hamas and its horrific activities.
Efforts to unveil the connection between Hamas and UNRWA have often received pushback, despite the evidence. But UNRWA's leadership calls the move a devastating blow for Palestinians, who will now receive less food, shelter, assistance, and medical aid at a time when living conditions are already near total collapse. That vote came hours before one of the most deadly Israeli airstrikes in weeks in northern Gaza. Nearly 100 people were killed when an airstrike hit a 5-story apartment block where hundreds had been sheltering. At least 25 of the victims are believed to be children. Video from the scene showed bodies being pulled from the rubble. An Israeli military spokesman said troops were targeting a suspected terrorist in the area and did not intend to collapse the building. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin confirms as many as 11,000 North Korean troops are in Russia's Kursk region near Ukraine, wearing Russian uniforms, carrying Russian equipment, and according to American intelligence reports, ready to go into combat against Ukraine. In remarks this week, Austin called it a dangerous and destabilizing move. Last June, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited North Korea for a summit with leader Kim Jong-un and is now receiving conventional weapons from North Korea to replenish arms depleted by his war with Ukraine. The Pentagon says there is a high probability the North Korean dictator, in exchange for troops on the battlefield, is likely asking Russia for technology to enhance his nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities. An important event this week at the Vatican, acknowledging the pain suffered by survivors of clerical sex abuse. On Tuesday, the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors released its first annual report on safeguarding, which focuses on justice and recognition for victims. The president of the commission, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, Archbishop Emeritus of Boston, acknowledged the long-term failure of the Catholic Church for not properly caring for victims. He stressed the importance of listening and empathizing with those who have been abused.
Their stories reveal a deceitful period where church leaders tragically failed those who we are called to shepherd. It's a tragic period where church leaders make decisions without adherence to policies, procedures, or basic standards of concern for victims. It's a dark period that results in a loss of trust that hinders the church's ability to be a witness of Christ's love.
The annual safeguarding report is designed to outline the Vatican's procedures for protecting minors, as well as complement the Commission's advocacy role in formation and training to prevent abuse. In an unexpected interview on Belgian TV last week, a former high-ranking Vatican official discussed a financial scandal and trial our team has been following since the summer of 2019. Cardinal Angelo Becciu was found guilty of embezzlement and fraud in a Vatican court in 2023 for funneling millions of euros into his brother's charity and a London property investment. The cardinal maintains his innocence and remains free while his appeal proceeds. In the rare interview, Becciu claims even the Pope encouraged him to invest the Vatican funds.
Fondo di 600 milioni.
It was a 600 million fund. So this 600 million fund, do you want to leave them under the drawer? Or do you have to multiply them? The Pope himself said that this is foolish not to invest.
EWTN News has reached out to the Vatican Communications Office and has not yet received comment. You can find our complete report on the EWTN YouTube page. Our final segment is next. Reflections about newly named saints, All Souls Day, and devotions to the holy souls in Purgatory. We'll be right back. Catholics around the world honor the first day of November as the Solemnity of All Saints, a moment to ask for the intercession of the whole Church triumphant, known and unknown. This year, during the Synod on Synodality, Pope Francis named more than a dozen new saints for Catholics to venerate. We bring you to that canonization Mass now. Thousands of faithful Catholics gathered in St. Peter's Square last month on World Mission Sunday for the canonization of 14 new saints. While not household names, these holy men and women dedicated their lives to serving others.
These new saints lived Jesus' way, service. They made themselves servants of their brothers and sisters, creative in doing good, steadfast in difficulties, and generous to the end.
Among the newly canonized, the 11 martyrs of Damascus, Father Manuel Ruiz Lopez and 7 of his fellow Franciscan priests, along with 3 Maronite laymen, siblings Francis, Moody, and Raphael Masabki. These 19th century men refused to renounce Christianity and convert to Islam during a wave of religious violence. They were killed in the city's Christian quarter in 1860 for their commitment to their Catholic faith. In their honor, the gospel was chanted in Greek, along with the traditional Italian. The other 3 new saints dedicated their lives to service. A local priest with a global legacy, Father Joseph Alamano founded the Consolata missionaries in 1901. Though he never left his native Italy, his hundreds of missionaries share the gospel around the world. Father James Bola Langarin, the new Superior General of the male branch of Consolata missionaries, explains the significance of St. Alamano's canonization taking place on World Mission Sunday, a day he played a pivotal role in starting.
In 1912, he himself asked all the missionary congregations by then to say that the mission is not known, and we have to have something in the whole church whereby mission is reflected upon, and we pray over the missions and we help the missions. And when they gave us to that date, and I knew that it is the World Mission Date, and said, wow, this is really the other miracle that has taken place, because he was part and parcel of that.
The Holy Father also canonized Canadian-born Sister Marie Léonie Paradis, who founded the Little Sisters of the Holy Family in 1880, an order with a special mission to serve priests and support them not only through constant prayer, but through cooking, cleaning, and laundry. The final new saint is Mother Elena Guerra, foundress of the Oblates of the Holy Spirit. She was instrumental in promoting the first ever novena to the Holy Spirit and sent dozens of letters to Pope Leo XIII in the late 19th and early 20th centuries to encourage greater devotion. During his homily, Pope Francis reflected on these saints' commitment to continuing Christ's work of service in the world.
We confidently ask their intercession so that we too can follow Christ, follow him in service, and become witnesses of hope for the world.
A life dedicated to the service of others, Pope Francis continued his reflections on that theme during his recitation of the Angelus on All Saints' Day. He said serving others is the clearest path to sainthood.
Aperta e rivolta a tutti, aperta e rivolta al mondo intero.
The Holy Father told thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square that God calls everyone to be a saint and gives those who are baptized what they need to reach heaven. He went on to say the Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew provide the faithful with a roadmap to sainthood. Pope Francis ended the Angelus by asking visitors to pray for peace in Ukraine and the Middle East, as well as for the victims of recent flooding in Spain. During the month of November, the Church also calls on us to pray for the holy souls in purgatory, those who were found in friendship with God but need purification before they reach heaven. Father Patrick Mary, Community Vicar for the Franciscan Missionaries of the Eternal Word, explains the importance of praying for these souls.
Again, they are going to heaven, but we also refer to them as the poor souls in purgatory because they can't help themselves. They can no longer merit, so they rely completely upon the mercy of God and our prayers for them. So again, that's why we can plug into this and carry out this spiritual work of mercy by praying for their souls, particularly through this month of November.
Catholics can earn a special indulgence for the souls in purgatory by praying at a graveyard during the month of November. Father Patrick says you can also offer rosaries, Divine Mercy chaplets, and masses for their souls. May the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. I'm Montse Alvarado. Join us next week for EWTN News' live team coverage on Tuesday evening, Election Day, with follow-up election programming on Wednesday morning. And this program will return same time next week with more election analysis and other news important to your Catholic life. It was great to be with you. I hope to see you then.